Welcome to Shining the Light. My name is S.E. Waleboa and my guest today is Cliff Seleka. He's a biomedical engineering manager at the recently established Ketumile Masire Teaching Hospital. His role includes commissioning of the first comprehensive cancer center in Botswana with world-class radiotherapy and nuclear medicine facilities. Clifford is an alumni of the Public Management Institute at UC Davis and a 2018 Mandela Washington Fellow. He is also the president of the Biomedical Engineering Society of Botswana. Welcome, Cliff. How you doing, my brother?
Thank you very much, Sanya.
Good.
I'm good, and I'm really excited to be doing this.
Right,
and
right,
thanks
right.
for having me, by the way. It's quite an honor, and I feel really humbled by your invitation to actually do this interview.
Man, I'm excited about this, Cliff. I'm excited to have you here today. So how have you been handling the pandemic, man? I mean, I guess it's getting a little bit better, but in some other parts of the world, you know, it's still out there, you know? I mean, here in America, you know, we still have some numbers spiking.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's quite hectic. I work in the front line. I get to see how events are unfolding with regards to the pandemic. Mm-hmm. But still, I'm still human, you know. I still want to have my social life. I still want to live a normal life. So it's been hard on me, like having to stay home, the lockdowns and the new normal, just the difference in the lifestyle and life as I'm used to has been quite challenging, I must say. But I think finally there's light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully somebody will come with a vaccine very soon.
Right. You know, hopefully. Have you heard about the Madagascar? You know, that they found something that was, I guess it was a little bit traditional. Have you heard about that? You know, but I don't think the international community listened to them anyway. So.
Yes, it actually did trend on social media. Uh-huh. So I did hear about it, and I'm a person who believes in possibilities within the alternative medicine and traditional medicine industry or sectors. But I'm usually slow to jump up and down or to get excited about it until proper trials have been conducted and we can be rest assured that there is efficacy in whatever the claims that are brought forward are. So I did hear about it, but then I did, of course, reserve my comments, and I still will reserve my comments until something scientific with regards to the efficacy and the safety is published.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah. Listen, man, before we go deep into the conversation, let's talk a little bit about your background, where you were born, where you went to school, you know, because we want like the kids to say that, you know, he was just one of us.
Yes, indeed, Sanyam. Maybe on my background, I was actually born in South Africa, in Bakenberg, which is in the northwestern part of South Africa. At the time when I was born, my mom was actually living in South Africa. So shortly after that, I think when I was a year old and my brother was 2 years old, we relocated to Botswana. And from there on, I've been living here. I've been resident of this country. And I started school in Gaborone. I've lived most of my life in Gaborone. And I started school in Gaborone in a private school, of course, for a couple of years. But at some point, I had to move from school. I was in Lekaya Primary. I had to move from Lekaya Primary to a public school. I went to Lesedi, where I completed my primary school. Then after completing my primary school, I continued with the public education system. I went to secondary school in Nanohang, then Naledi afterwards. Then after graduating my high school, I won a scholarship by the government of Botswana. And immediately I had to relocate. I had to travel to Russia, where I did my first degree. After completing my first degree, I came back home and worked for a couple of years. And then after some time, I decided to continue with my studies, and I enrolled for an MSc program with the University of Botswana.
Wow, did you say...
in terms of my educational background, yes.
I have two questions that I want to ask you as far as, your background is concerned. The first question is in regard to transitioning from a Lehigh primary school to a public school. What was the difference? I mean, as far as curriculum is concerned.
Yeah, there was a huge difference. And I think coming from a private school and transition to a public school gave me, to some extent, an advantage in that I had covered quite a lot of material in the early years of my studies. And when I transitioned to the public school, I realized that the curriculum was quite different, and some of the things that I was starting to learn there are things that I had already covered a couple of years before. But I think all in all, it wasn't a train smash, it wasn't bad, because I think I must commend our government in terms of trying to keep our public education system at par, from private to public. There were, yes, exceptions and instances where I felt that, I had better there than here, but then all in all, it wasn't a train smash. And I actually coped well with the transition, and it did reflect in my results, because I did well in my primary school being examinations, and I think I really enjoyed the public the public schools. They were quite fun and challenging, and you had to fend for yourself a bit here and there, So it was a lovely experience,
And the other question is on the being in Russia, because I've met a lot of students who went to Russia, and sometimes when they come back, they have some sort of a communist mind. Did communism over there affect you overall?
My experience in Russia, when I started in Russia, actually there was a culture shock, because I came from a predominantly Western inclined country.
Correct.
Where our culture is very similar to what you see in the West, right? Yeah. And our mode of communication is English. So I had to leave a comfort zone, which is home, right? What I'm used to. And I had to go live in a country where the culture was completely different from what I'm used to or what I know, right? Even the media that I've been exposed to since I was a child was dominantly Western. So, I was quite familiar with a lot of with the Western culture, if I may say, and I'm very familiar with our culture, our African culture in Botswana, because we do, of course, have our culture. So when I had to go to Russia, I remember day one when I landed in Domodedovo Airport.
Okay.
I had never been in so much shock, because in a couple of minutes, I had been reduced from an articulate, ambitious young man to somebody who couldn't even communicate because nobody understood what I was saying. I didn't know the language. Nobody was bothered when I spoke to them in English, and some were even irritable. You know, when you say hello in English, some would get irritable. Right. But then over the year, I got acquainted with Russian culture when I started studying and I started settling in. And I actually got to learn a lot, got to embrace the Russian way of doing things. I got to appreciate and tolerate their culture and the way they do things. And I did actually fit in at some point. Ultimately, I did manage to fit in. And at that point, they took from being a shock to being a life-changing and rewarding experience for me. I always tell people that, you know what, I got my life, my Bob life moment when I was in Russia, because that is the time when I had to deal with the biggest challenge I had ever faced in my life, which was to learn language in 10 months and pursue a degree program in engineering immediately after in a foreign language. And I wasn't used to the climatic conditions. Russia is very cold. And initially I was shocked by their temperament because Russians are very serious.
Okay.
The food, there was a culture of food, but over years I was able to actually to adapt. And at some point, they were impressed by how well I speak Russian and how well I'm appreciated and understand their culture. And from that time onwards, I fell in love with Russia. I fell in love with Moscow. I think the Russian people are quite warm and very hospitable and very, very fun and interesting to be around. You know? Wow. So I think all in all, it started gloomy, but then the end picture is a good one. I actually had a good experience.
Wow. Wonderful, man. You know, I like that background, you know. I'm always fascinated by stories out of Russia, you know. But look, man, so normally those interested in biomed tend to be proficient in math and science from a young age, right? And devoted to logical problem solving. Why did you decide to go for biomedical engineering? Did you also have the passion to help people at a young age?
Yeah, actually, you are right in that mathematics proficiency is actually necessary key to actually pursuing a career in biomedical engineering, let alone engineering, you know, not just bio. So from a very young age, I think from when I was 7 years old, I made a decision. I remember getting home one day very excited. And I was excited because I knew exactly what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I got to my mom and I did tell her, you know what, I have thought about it and I know what I want to do when I grow up. And I remember at that point in time when I was 7, I knew I wanted to be a scientist. What kind of scientist? I had not made a decision. I actually believed that being a scientist on its own was just a career. You know, I just felt there was no need to try any further. So getting home, I told my mom I wanted to be a scientist, and she was very supportive. And since that time, it kind of developed within me. I developed interest towards science and passion and love for science. As I grew up, I started maturing a bit more and being more specific, right, with my interests. So I remember when I was 11, I developed a passion for astronomy. And from the age of 11 till when I was, I think, 16, I was adamant and quite sure that I wanted to become an astronomer.
Oh.
Until one day I walked into a guidance and counseling class where we had to discuss our career aspirations. And I told the whole class that I wanted to be an astronomer. Everybody laughed at me. Everybody told me, that is a Western thing to do. You know, you are in Africa, you will get a job. That's not a career that you can pursue in Africa. You know, you are being unrealistic. So that kind of had a bearing on my decision making going forward. So I remember when I was 16, because of that, I had a lot of doubts in terms of pursuing this career. But then one thing that remained within my mind was, one thing that I was sure about was that I wanted to continue with my passion. I wanted to be an artist. So when I was 18, I won a scholarship, and you won't believe it. It was an open check. I could choose from anything I wanted to do. You know? Okay. So I remember picking my phone and calling my mom to tell her, I just want the scholarship to Russia and I can choose anything I want. And I was looking at a list that the Ministry of Tertiary Education had given me, a list of courses that I could choose from. And right in that list, top of the list was astronomy. So I told my mom, you know what, astronomy is even top of the list. I think this is science. Yeah. So she didn't want to influence my decision. So she told me, you know what, my son, I know you love science and you're passionate about it. So I'm not going to influence your decision making because this is a long-term decision. I want you to sit down, think, and choose what you love the most. Yeah. So at that moment, a lot of thoughts started coming to my mind. I remember reflecting on how people laughed at me wanting to be an astronomer. But then from there, I decided, you know what, I cannot pursue this career because I got negative feedback on it. Right. But one thing for sure, when I grew up, when I was young, at some point I felt I loved medicine, right? Then as I grew up and grew up the ranks in terms of the education standards and levels, I got to realize that I was stronger in physics and mathematics. So I remember my biology teacher telling me that, you know what, people like you who are in math and all the science disciplines tend to do well in engineering. So since I had a passion for medicine and I wanted to help people, and I also loved engineering and I was strong in math and physics, I decided to pursue a career that bridges the two disciplines. And in doing so, you know, I got to appreciate that, you know what, there's a challenge. Because I remember at some point wondering, people talk about doctors, people talk about nurses, but I've never had any talk about somebody, the person who ensures that all the technology and machines within a hospital function now and in a proper working state. So at that point, I reached this decision that, you know what, I'm not going to go with astronomy anymore. I think if there's a need or if there's a gap that needs to be bridged urgently in my country, it's within the space of biomedical engineering. And that's when I decided and how I decided to become a biomedical engineer. I know it might seem like it's a dream that came later in my path towards becoming a professional, but it was in alignment to my dreams for a long time because I still believe that as a biomedical engineer, I haven't drifted so far away from my passion, my childhood dream of becoming a scientist. So I actually pursued the degree, and I actually fell in love with the profession, and I don't regret my decision. I'm very proud of myself for having pursued this profession and career. It's something that I do with so much passion. So, yeah.
Look, Cliff, the government of Botswana intends to transform commodity-led economy to knowledge-based and innovation-led economy. And so in 2015, the Ministry of Tertiary Education, Research, Science and Technology started the National Science Week and STEM Festival. Has that been effective?
Yes, and I think it's a step in the good direction.
Mm-hmm.
That is to say, everything starts somewhere. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Mm-hmm. So I won't be all hard on the Ministry of Tertiary Education, since they have they have actually identified a need, which is actually a significant step or a lot of progress with regards to realization of that dream of becoming a knowledge-based economy. The festival, yes, to some extent, has been effective, and in that I know of people who have actually attended that festival and have had a complete shift in their mindset towards science, because what we've been seeing over the years is people are starting to prefer business courses over STEM courses because of the ease of getting a job and finding comfort now in Botswana and progressing within that life, within that professional life. With STEM, you tend to get a job, but then over time you seem to stagnate, right? So we've seen that transition in terms of interest from people wanting to pursue engineering and science courses to preparing business courses. So I think with such festivals, they kind of reignite that interest and passion.
But are we seeing...
I cannot say it's enough yet. I believe that there's a lot building a knowledge-based economy, especially an economy driven by science and technology. It's something that it's a very lengthy and long process, which includes building awareness and changing mindset. So like I said when I started, I believe that it's a good initiative and it's a step in the right direction. But then in terms of what is currently in the ground, I don't think we are at a point where we can say we are seeing that transition in terms of interest by young people wanting to pursue careers in science and technology. But I think over years, and with continued efforts by the Ministry of Tertiary Education, we can potentially change that. The festival, I don't think is very well widespread in terms of people being aware of its existence. But I think over time, as we optimize and scale up, they'll be able to build efficiencies and to build confidence and to build a following that can ultimately lead to a positive change. But in terms of saying that we've been successful so far in that campaign, I cannot confidently and comfortably say so. I still believe there's a lot of work that needs to be put into building awareness and actually advocating for STEM within our society and within the country.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about abuse? Is it an effort to promote STEM, and engage both students and parents?
BUS was a huge milestone in terms of building a STEM-led economy. And I think the government's effort in actually seeing through the implementation of BUS has so far had a significant impact in the professional landscape of the country and has actually given them a very good boost in terms of building skill and capacity locally to actually achieve our dream of becoming a knowledge-based economy. So BUST, as a university, of course, has a mandate, and its mandate is actually centered around development of science, technology, and engineering, right? So it will help in actually bridging the gap in bridging the shortage of skilled professionals in the field of engineering and science. So over the past years, we've seen Botswana transition from a country or an economy that is dependent on foreign countries to develop their professionals in areas of science and technology to a country that can internally train its own engineers. And we've had quite a number of cohorts that have graduated out of BUST. And BUST has also created a platform for research within the science and technology space. And that is something that has been lacking for so long in our country, right? We've been training our engineers outside and our scientists outside, our technologists outside. But once they return and come back to Botswana, they don't fit into the ecosystem or the academic ecosystem and professional ecosystem that exists in the country. So abuse, to some extent, is bridging that gap by promoting a platform for research and for skills and knowledge exchange amongst scientists, engineers, and technologists. So I think BUST as an organization is a very important piece in the puzzle, and the big picture being establishing a culture of innovation, driven by engineering, science, and technology. So I think it's a very important piece within that puzzle, and there's still work, or there's still room to improve in terms of optimization of the organization. But I think one big gap that I must note is that a university cannot exist in isolation. There is need for development of a whole ecosystem.
Okay.
So BUST, yes, it does have a very important role to play, and it's very well based, and it's doing well within that space. But then alone, they cannot achieve a knowledge-based economy. We need, as a country, to develop an ecosystem which can be the basis on which we build a knowledge-based economy. So I can, once again, I'll say that I think it's a step in a good direction by our government, and it was a good initiative. But then alone, not enough. We need to improve and build the entire ecosystem, just so that we can transition from labs, from academia, to tangible products and tangible results. So currently what you are seeing people being trained, then after they are trained, they are not a match for the economy because the ecosystem has not been holistically developed. We haven't been able to incorporate entrepreneurship and a culture of innovation, a culture of translational research into the kind of education that we provide. So I think it's a step in a good direction, but there's need to optimize and to actually develop other structures that will work together to facilitate a transition from a resource-based to knowledge-based economy.
Wow, that's an eye-opening. Are we doing something about this gender gap? Are we getting more girls into the STEM fields? Because I think we're still seeing more boys graduating than girls, right?
Actually, I think there's a lot
I
that
could
is
be wrong. I mean, I
happening.
could be wrong, so.
Yes. Honestly and frankly, I think there's a lot that has been happening, or a lot is being done in terms of creating incentives for women to actually pursue careers in STEM. I have seen efforts by certain independent entities to actually promote women in STEM by actually giving them a priority in terms of recruitment over male counterparts, just so that women can get interested in actually pursuing a career in STEM. But then, I think some of these challenges are embedded in the culture, and for you to address them, you need to go deep.
Okay.
You need to go deeper into the culture and
I like that.
Initiate a social paradigm shift. Or what we are seeing in Botswana, we have a culture that believes that women belong in administrative and business industries as opposed to engineering and science, because they consider science and engineering as blue collar and works that are heavy and difficult for a woman. So creating incentive on its own, I don't feel is enough. It is like it addresses part of the problem, but that I think the fundamental issue is within the culture and society. So I think, and I hope to see campaigns emerge, right, and more activists come up and go into the society and interact with the society in efforts to actually ignite a paradigm shift in terms of where a woman belongs and where a man belongs in the professional landscape. So even though a lot of things have happened over the years, there's been quite a bit of traction in that area. I still feel that we need to pull it out by the roots, and the roots are in perception or public perception or societal views on science and women and where women belong. So I think it would really help if the country embarked on a very aggressive campaign to aim at changing that mindset. So, but I think over the years we've seen quite an improvement in terms of the numbers. But is it sustainable if we don't actually change the culture? That one I cannot confidently say, because once the incentives wear off, then the picture might change.
So, Cliff, what is your role as a biomedical engineer right now in the health sector? I think you and we talked about this, when we were on the phone.
Thank you very much. As a biomedical engineer, my role in general is just to ensure that it's just to ensure that technology is integrated in our patient care, right? So my role as a biomedical engineer is to ensure that whenever there is a technological breakthrough, it can be infused into patient care just so that we can improve on our outcomes. So during the pandemic, my role has been basically to ensure that we do acquire all required technology to support our patient care efforts. So that includes ensuring that we have enough ventilators, supplies that actually support those ventilators, ensuring that our clinical staff, being our doctors, nurses, are competent in terms of safe operation of these machines, as well as ensuring that the supply chain of consumables associated with such critical equipment is secured, and ensuring that we can offer technology solutions that benefit the patient and result in better patient outcomes. So my role in COVID has included ensuring that, first of all, our ICU is ready to take COVID patients. I believe over the past months, as the COVID crisis was spreading across the world, we got to know about the need for ICU space for COVID patients, the need for ventilators, the need for oxygen, the need for general medical supplies. And as a biomedical engineer, I form part of a team which ensures that the supply chain considerations and needs of the hospital and the patient are met. So my role includes not just equipment, but also capacity building, like I have already said, for the clinical staff. It's not about bringing a machine and dumping it on the doctors and the nurses.
Okay.
And often people think that doctors and nurses are gurus and they know everything, they know what the machine does, but then they also need to be trained, because every single machine, every single ventilator, every single monitor comes with its own special features. And as a biomedical engineer, my role is to ensure that as they use that monitor or that ventilator on a patient, they do it in a way that is safe and as efficient as possible, just so that they can ensure the best patient outcomes. So part of my role is to train them and to continuously teach them and ensure that they are very well competent in terms of using the machines. My role also includes ensuring an uninterrupted supply of oxygen in the hospital, just to ensure that at all times, all patients who require oxygen do not run out of oxygen. So it's a very big responsibility, and it's quite demanding to ensure that oxygen supply is that the oxygen demand is well met across the hospital. And so what I usually tell people is, as biomedical engineer, we are responsible for the air that our patients breathe, the machines that breathe for them, and to ensure that the people who actually take care of them are competent in terms of using the machines that, or the machinery that supports them. You know, my role is also to advise, because there is a business aspect or component to biomedical engineering. One of the most spoken of business imperatives of modern times is sustainability. Healthcare has evolved to being just about giving patient care, but doing it in a way that is efficient and can be sustained over a long period of time. Right. I know even in the USA, there's been a lot of conversations around health financing. Correct. So as biomedical engineers, we have a role in ensuring that whatever solutions we offer are cost effective and are sustainable over a long period of time. In Botswana, the challenge over the years that we've learned to appreciate and to start addressing has been the skyrocketing cost of healthcare. And as a biomedical engineer, it's my responsibility to see how, as a function within healthcare, I can contribute towards efforts of reducing the health bill of the country. And that is part of my day-to-day job, ensuring that I come up with engineering solutions that can cut costs and ensure that we deliver the most optimal, safe healthcare solution that is cost-effective and sustainable.
So right now, So right now you cannot have, equipment just lying around, like, people talking about, you cannot fix this, or buying the wrong buying the wrong equipment, right?
One thing I can say, or one thing that I can admit, is that there's still a challenge in terms of availability of biomedical engineers within hospitals and the public
Okay.
sector. There is a publication that was published by the World Health Organization a couple of years ago, and it ranked Botswana as top of Africa in terms of the ratio of biomedical engineers.
Cliff, can you
Yes,
talk
sir.
about that? I didn't hear. What were you saying about ranking Botswana? Can you start again?
Yes, there is a publication that was published by the World Health Organization a couple of years ago that ranked Botswana as top of Africa in terms of the ratio of biomedical engineers to the population. And relative to different regions in the world, Botswana was somewhere between European countries, you understand? So in terms of training and building the skill within the biomedical engineering fraternity, I think the country has done significantly well, and it's quite impressive, and it needs to be commended. But then the problem has been that within the very same application, there was a graph that was showing the ratio of biomedical engineers who work within hospitals. And Botswana was one of the poor performers in Africa. So we have by ratio the largest ratio of biomedical engineers in Africa, but we have the least biomedical engineers in the hospital by ratio. So that means that biomedical engineers are not in patient care, but rather in industry. That is to say that they function as technicians within private companies or as sales agents, right? So this creates a gap or a limitation within, say, the public sector in terms of the management of equipment, because you have one engineer within the public sector to maybe 5 hospitals. And this person is overwhelmed, needs to deal with the day-to-day needs of the hospital where they are placed, needs to function within a system that is efficient and doesn't have resources to support them. So this, in the end, translates to inefficiencies that you mentioned that we see, which you can attribute to a lack of skill and resources to actually support the field or the discipline of biomedical engineering. So the problem is still there. And I know government is aware of it. I know hospitals are aware of the problem, and they've been working tirelessly to see how they can close the gaps and address the issue. I think one big problem, maybe worth mentioning, is that even though we train these biomedical engineers, we don't have a plan in terms of how we are going to develop them and train them within our health system, right? So there's a lot of brain drain. There's a lot of attrition, particularly within the public sector. And then this ends up with the challenges that you mentioned, like where there's a mismatch between what is actually being acquired for the hospital and the needs of the hospital. Correct. And when you have one engineer taking care of quite a vast territory, it becomes very difficult for them to efficiently and effectively execute their duties. Not to say that a professional should be exempted from their responsibilities. We are all professionals and we are liable and we should be accountable for our actions. But I believe that there's a lot that government can do to actually capacitate our engineers just so that they can diligently execute their duties.
Wow.
Having worked in the public sector, I can tell you that most of the time I was very occupied, I was running around. But then, was I efficient? No. Why? Because the necessary platforms that are supposed to aid me to do my job are either very fragile or non-existent. So in the end, I end up not being able to execute. So for biomedical engineering to be an efficient service, it cannot be achieved in isolation as well. You need to have a holistic approach in terms of addressing the challenges within the healthcare sector. That is to say, procurement has to be on board, HR has to be on board, and all the other associated support disciplines need to be on board.
Is the ministry addressing those challenges? Or?
I cannot speak on behalf of the ministry, but I have seen efforts in the past to try and address those issues, but I think we've been quite slow because even today, the number of engineers within the public sector is extremely low, and that poses a challenge, or it creates a gap. And in healthcare, there is no room for mistakes. We have zero appetite for inefficiency in healthcare because an inefficiency perceived small by one can cost human life, So I feel we need to move at a very fast pace, or as agile as we possibly can, to actually close this gap. And it starts with leadership within government understanding the role of biomedical engineering in ensuring that the entire healthcare ecosystem is functional. Because as much as we are not the face of healthcare, biomedical engineers play a very crucial role in ensuring that healthcare functions and works. And until there is buy-in from leadership, from even the highest levels of leadership, we might have a challenge in closing the gaps that the profession currently faces. And that includes even ensuring that the welfare of biomedical engineering, is actually thought of, and actually the grievance is addressed, because we have a very skilled workforce, people who trained in the best universities in the world. We train our engineers and our scientists in world-class universities and the best facilities in the world. Okay. But then immediately when they come back home, we frustrate them. We subject them to conditions that are not favorable to their professional growth. And you end up with very demoralized and frustrated professionals who could have done better if they were afforded a proper platform, proper work environment. So I feel there's a lot of work that needs to be put in addressing welfare issues for biomedical engineers across the country. And until the government of Botswana realizes that and addresses that, healthcare is never going to function, because biomedical engineering, just like pharmacy and lab, are actually the pivots or the supporting, fundamental supporting units within any healthcare system.
Hopefully, we'll have those challenges, resolved, right? Cliff, let's just go, because otherwise we're gonna spend 2 hours here. Let's sort of kind of move to another section.
Okay.
Help us understand the importance of medical technology and the role it plays in patients' care.
I can confidently say there are different blocks in patient care that are very important and critical. One being the human resource, right? Ensuring that you have competent and very skilled doctors and nurses is important. Ensuring that you have access to supplies, your pharma, your lab is also very important. But biomedical engineering, just like the doctors, pharmacy, lab, is a very, very important discipline within healthcare. And that is because biomedical engineering offers a technology solution or technology that is used in healthcare. I believe technology is actually the backbone of healthcare. Why? For doctors nowadays to diagnose you, they depend on a lab test, right?
Okay.
They'll take a specimen from you, be it blood, urine, or whatever sample that taken, right? Then they'll put it into a bottle or into a container and send it to the lab. When this sample gets to the lab, it is run by it is put into an analyzer, or the test is run through an analyzer. And that analyzer is a technology, it's a machine. At the output of that analyzer will be the patient's result, right? It will tell you this patient has this disease, this patient is normal, or this patient is unwell, right?
Right.
Then the scientist will sit there and actually quality assure what the machine is saying and send it back to the doctor. And the doctor will look at the patient and tell the patient, I think you have cancer, right? So in modern times, there's no way you can separate technology from healthcare, because the most of healthcare is actually dependent on technology, right? I was just giving you an example on diagnosis. Nowadays, diagnosis in a lab is done on a machine, right? Yes, we do have people looking at microscopes and assessing cells individually, but then we've been able as engineers, as biomedical engineers, to actually automate some of these processes. So in healthcare systems across the world, we see the practice transition from the traditional manual methods, biochemistry, chemistry and differential diagnosis, to a more technology-inclined kind of system. So I believe technology in healthcare is very important. After determining that a person, yes, has cancer, now you need to go on to the treatment. And part of the treatment includes or involves technology. In some instances, you will need radiotherapy to the patient. And once again, there's a machine. So through the entire value chain, technology and equipment is involved. So there's no way you can divorce healthcare from technology. So having said that, I believe that healthcare and technology are two disciplines that you can never separate. And technology is very important and actually very critical to delivery of healthcare. And having said that, I believe even the role of biomedical engineers within the healthcare ecosystem has been redefined by this transition from conservative old methods to methods that are actually now guided by technology. And over and above just providing healthcare, technology also helps optimize, right? We can leverage digital technology, we can leverage artificial intelligence to actually cut on turnaround times and optimize our services. I've seen in Botswana, for instance, I've seen in Botswana, for instance, a very good uptake of AI within the lab, which has, to some extent, improved on the turnaround times within our lab space. A couple of years ago, I was involved in a project when I was with Ministry of Health, and the project was to reduce the turnaround time for Pap smear, and as well as to eliminate or to remove or to address the backlog that was there in the country. Patients would come in, get a Pap smear done, and only get the results 9 months later. 9 months later.
Wow.
Because there was a serious shortage of pathologists. And for us to address that, we needed to embrace technology and to automate a significant amount of, a significant number of processes within the lab. And within that automation, there was a particular system that it actually really impressed me. It was called a focal point machine. So this machine is an AI system of some kind, in that it has been taught to actually identify abnormal cells and mark them, just so that when the pathologist sits at the slide, their analysis of the slides is quite targeted. And having implemented that, we were able to cut the turnaround time from 9 months to 4 weeks. Wow. So that was really significant. And, in treatment of cancer, early detection is actually key, and it can make a difference. So this is just an example of what technology can do in terms of enhancing and optimization of healthcare. So I don't take lightly the role that technology and biomedical engineering plays in healthcare. It's quite important, and it's high time that everybody within leadership and within the family of healthcare professionals appreciate and acknowledge and accept biomedical engineers as part of.
It seems to me that the government is actually is actually embracing that, and the entire healthcare family in Botswana, right?
Yes, they are, but the limitations is you do embrace the technology, but then you do not empower the people who are supposed to support the systems and ensure that we can sustain them. You understand? So that's why I say we can only address it if the entire system comes to the party, because the part of the issues come from HR, part of the issues come from inefficiency in the procurement processes, and part of the issue comes from welfare issues and frustration of the engineers. So I think even though we embrace technology, we need to take a holistic approach in terms of ensuring that the technology functions and we can sustain its functionality, and we can sustain those milestones that we achieve once in a while by incorporating technology into our healthcare.
Wow. That's pretty good, man. I heard the Minister of Tertiary Education, Research, Science and Technology mentioning that Botswana Institute for Tech Research and Innovation has a prototype of ventilators. I'm not quite sure about that. I know it takes a long time to do this thing. And confirm that it performed well. Is that true, Cliff? I mean, these designs and innovation, they take a lot of money, research and testing, right?
You know what, Sunny? In terms of development, I believe you've been following what has been happening across the world in terms of the race to develop a COVID-19 vaccine.
Vaccine, yeah.
There's a rigorous process in actually developing a concept, to actually having a product within the market that can be accessed and utilized by patients, right? And I believe that they have done a good job in terms of coming up with a concept and having done that, yes, it's a big step in the right direction, but we are still far from saying that we are ready to actually put this out for use on patients, because with healthcare technology and equipment and even the pharma business, there is need to ensure that there is quality assurance on all the products that we use on patients, because the nature of the business we are in, we need to safeguard the lives of people and to ensure that whatever we use on people is as safe as it can possibly be. I did come across a prototype. I don't know who had made it, but I believe it's the one you are talking about. And I must say that in terms of getting the mechanics and the moving components within it going, it's a good job. It was well done, right?
Okay.
I will stop short of saying we have reached a point where we can say it's optimal and it's ready for use on patients. And I will stop short of that because I believe Botswana has a process in terms of listing devices that are safe for use within our market. And I believe unless something has happened that I'm not aware of, I believe that it hasn't been listed with BOMRA yet as a device that can be given to patients and used within the healthcare setup. But having said that, I think it's commendable that for the first time you see Botswana starting to think outside the box. Now we are starting to say, you know what, we cannot be a consuming economy. We need to start building capability to actually develop some product for ourselves locally.
Right.
And, not everything about COVID is bad, In COVID, there's an opportunity to actually localize some things. And I think what you are seeing coming out of institutions like B3 and BUST and UB is a step in the right direction. And it's something that if it's sustained, even beyond the pandemic time, will benefit the economy and will help government realize our vision of transitioning from a resource-based to a knowledge-based economy. I think, in summary, with regards to that question, I believe it's a commendable effort, and it needs to be appreciated, and I do actually appreciate it. But then in terms of its readiness for consumption by patients, I don't think it's yet there. I haven't had an opportunity myself to try it. But then from a distance, just looking at it, I wouldn't say it's a complete ventilator with all ventilation modes and capabilities that can be meshed to ICU ventilators. But it seems like it's what we call a CPAP machine.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a breathing support machine.
Yeah.
But then can I say it's a ventilator? I cannot call it a ventilator yet. I think it's either a CPAP or a BiPAP, having looked at it from a distance, not having interacted closely with it. Yeah. But not to wash down the progress or the effort. I get a CPAP is still something that is very needed, especially for COVID. Most patients actually require CPAP and BiPAP than those who require advanced ventilation modes. So in terms of developing an industry, I think it's a step in the right direction, and I think it's commendable. But then for patient consumption, we are not yet there. I think a lot of work needs to be done, and a multi-sectorial approach needs to be brought into it. You need to have biomedical engineers onboarded in the whole process, working together with other engineers in other disciplines like mechanical engineering and electrical. And you need to bring in the regulators, the likes of BOMRA, just so that we can tie the loose ends and achieve a product that can actually be put out to the market. And I'm hoping that following that publication and that show off of the ventilator, more effort will be made towards engaging other stakeholders just to ensure that we can actually move this design from the lab to the society, move it from the lab to the public to consume, right? Because ultimately, that's what a knowledge-based economy is premised on, being able to get your product and your dissertations and your researches from the lab out into the public for consumption.
Yeah. Wow, good.
Yeah.
But as far as masks, we're making our own masks, right? So.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm aware that there was also a project that was running. I'm not sure who exactly was leading it in terms of manufacturing of masks, and I think prototypes were developed. But I'm not sure in terms of the scale up if we've been able to start producing such masks domestically. But I'm aware that we still do import a significant number of masks from outside. So I believe it's another project which had started, but also needs to be subjected to a rigorous quality assurance process. Because just like a ventilator, a mask is also a healthcare device. It needs to be subjected there. We need to test it for safety and efficacy. And until these processes have been closed with the regulators, it will be very difficult to move it from the lab to the market. I think the very same approach that I said, which is multi-sectorial in its nature, need to be applied to the masks as well, just so that we can move them from a concept to a product that can actually be consumed.
Right.
So in terms of rolling out of production of masks, local production of masks, I'm not sure. I cannot certainly say that it's not, but I'm aware that we still import quite a lot of masks, which means that we still haven't been able to produce enough to meet our local appetite.
Okay. We're running out of time. I was gonna, have you talk about the importance of research, because you can't talk about what you're doing without talking about research, right? I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, but I want to jump into the use of artificial intelligence, AI, in healthcare systems in Africa, in particular, can eliminate inefficiencies such as misdiagnosis, shortage in healthcare workers, help monitoring chronic diseases and recovery, right? Do you know, Cliff, if Botswana is working towards achieving this?
Yes, certainly, Sonia. I think there is a drive globally to actually infuse AI or artificial intelligence and machine learning into healthcare. And Botswana, just like all other countries, is very interested in that. Moreover, we have a shortage of health professionals. So I believe our leadership, and I know our leadership has actually expressed, and they continue to show interest in artificial intelligence. I just gave you an example about the cancer backlog, which government leveraged AI to actually optimize and reduce the turnaround times.
You mentioned the
backlog. So we are seeing the drive grow in other areas, areas like radiology, for example. I know that there's a team of researchers in Botswana who are actually looking at AI in medical imaging. I think that emphasis was particularly on chest X-ray. They were trying to come up with algorithms that will help diagnose TBs and lung cancers without necessarily needing a radiologist all the time. That is to say, instead of the radiologist spending 20 minutes on one chest X-ray, this will reduce the time, the turnaround time to maybe 2 minutes, because the view of the image or the analysis of the image will be quite targeted. So AI is very much embraced within healthcare in Botswana. And just last year, I had an opportunity or the honors of traveling to Africa Health in Johannesburg. And the theme of last year's Africa Health was embracing AI in healthcare. So I did get to see one creation by a certain manufacturer, an Asian manufacturer, and I was quite impressed with what they have been able to achieve in terms of their algorithms for diagnosis or diagnostic medicine. And Botswana is, just like the rest of the world, very interested in taking up these technologies as they mature and they become ready for public consumption. I know that Google is also working on something, because a couple of years ago when I was in San Francisco, I had an opportunity to visit Google. And one of the conversations
was it around the time when I saw you? Oh.
Yes, it was around the time when we met.
Okay.
And I know that they told me that one of their priorities is AI in healthcare. So just like all other countries that are challenged in terms of human resource, Botswana is interested in embracing AI. And actually in some institutions like, let's say, Ketumile, Masire, and other upcoming health hospitals, I know that they've been deliberate and very clear in their strategic intent that they are interested in embracing technology and artificial intelligence to optimize their systems. So I believe it's a very welcome, and it is well received and accepted by our leadership and healthcare professionals across the country. In biomedical engineers included, I think they're also interested in AI and what it can do for our health system.
Hey, Cliff, are you familiar with CRISPR engineering or genetic engineering or genetic modification? You know, where they
Yes, I'm aware of it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Actually, genetic engineering and basically tissue engineering and regenerative medicine is a very interesting discipline within biomedical engineering, and it's a research intensive area, because there's a lot of opportunity in terms of scientific breakthroughs within that space of science and engineering. And I'm familiar with it. I'm actually acquainted with one lady in Botswana. She's a biomedical engineer. She works for the University of Botswana. And she has a specialization in tissue engineering and regenerative medicine. And she's been doing quite a lot. And I know she's one of those people who have had very impressive prototypes that are just short of funding and resourcing, just so that they can take off.
Yeah.
And like I said when I started, I believe that funding and provision of resources and development of an ecosystem that can aid and support researchers is fundamental in actually achieving our aspirations of being a knowledge-based economy. And a lot of work needs to be put there, because it's been 2 years that this lady had a prototype, and the prototype was really based on the technologies, so the technologies that you're talking about in regenerative medicine and tissue engineering. And because of how do you say, an underdeveloped research environment or ecosystem, she has to wait for the country to catch up with her. And we are losing out in a lot of opportunities as a country.
And it comes down to funding, basically.
It comes down not just funding, but then buy-in, people understanding and appreciating that, you know what, we can actually diversify our economy along this line. And like I said, biomedical engineering is one of the areas where we outdo the rest of the continent.
I agree.
So it still defeats me or shocks me that we still haven't realized that. And that is a strategic advantage. You understand? And I believe the Ministry of Trade, and I hope that they'll watch my video, are listening and will do something in terms of actually taking advantage of this business advantage that they have over our counterparts.
Let's get back to the question of the mobile healthcare, because it holds tremendous potential. But this is just along the lines of what you've been talking about, right? It holds tremendous potential for extending healthcare services. So how do you see it shaping up during and especially post-pandemic?
I have participated in a couple of webinars, and in all the webinars, all the participants were trying to bring out and to outline the advantages of COVID in terms of advancing initiatives, I guess. So one thing that I can say is you are very right, and I'm very impressed with how very familiar you are with our healthcare system and the challenges, because the questions are just on point. One of the challenges that we have in Botswana, or that our healthcare faces, is that we are territorially a big country.
We are what?
Territorially.
Okay.
A very big country.
Uh-huh.
Botswana is almost the size of France. But in terms of population, there's only 2 million of us. We are sparsely populated. So this poses a challenge. And a challenge in a sense that you cannot overinvest in health infrastructure that will be underutilized. I always tell people, in terms of the health infrastructure, the country has done well, because 28 hospitals where public hospitals where a population of 2 million people is significant. It's a significant number. And we are doing that because we are planning our healthcare system around our healthcare access around the radius to service. So I know Botswana expects that all its citizens should be within a reasonable kilometer radius from a health facility. But then that is a challenging model, because it becomes unsustainable at some point, right? Because you need to maintain facilities that are more than what your population requires, and utilization is lower than the infrastructure that you have. So I believe that embracing mobile healthcare and telemedicine is actually critical to resolving healthcare access challenges in Botswana. Because even though healthcare is free, there's an issue of how far you are from the health facility. And people who live in the peripheries end up suffering, because for them to access a healthcare facility, they need to travel a very long distance. And at the same time, there's no business case on the government side to actually make that investment, because the numbers do not allow, right? So there's an opportunity in actually embracing mobile healthcare to optimize our healthcare system. And over and above just making sure that some of the facilities are put in a truck and taken to, and services are taken to the people in a mobile format, you also need to embrace telemedicine, just so that you don't need to get all your specialists inside your mobile clinics. They can go there, do what they do, and get support from your specialists at a central location. So it's something that we haven't yet done, but I know that it's something that government has been talking about for quite some time, and hopefully over years we'll see the strategy around healthcare access and investment shifting from putting fixed infrastructure to a more mobile and telemedicine centric kind of healthcare system.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. My next question is, I just thought about that I need to ask you, but you don't have to answer it because it might be a little bit political, and I don't want to get you into.
Okay.
I don't want to get you into politics. Healthcare service delivery in Botswana is pluralistic, but there's a huge gap in quality between public and private medical provisions, right? Which means if you are poor, there's a possibility that one doesn't get help on time. And then sometimes the results can be devastating, right? Your thought on this?
Yeah. You know what, Sunny? I think it's not a very political question because this is a challenge that we are all aware of, including our politicians, and I don't think anybody is in denial about it, right? That is why a couple of years ago, the government decided to embark on a project which was aimed at actually improving of our health services. And it's something that is embedded in the strategy of Ministry of Health, I believe, for quite a couple of years. And I had a privilege as an employee in Ministry of Health over the years to be part of what they call the Quality Improvement and Leadership Committee. So this committee was like a committee at national level, which was tasked with looking at quality and aiding and facilitating implementation of quality standards across the country. So government, in embarking in this project, they did appreciate that it's a very big project and it will take over time and will require significant investment because quality comes at a very big price. So they decided to take a stepwise approach in terms of implementations of the standards, right? And simultaneously, they did come up with what they termed national health standards. So these standards would be implemented in all the other hospitals across the country. So what happened over the time is that government picked a couple of hospitals that they would prioritize for accreditation, right? You had your Mahalapes, you had your Scottish, you had Zilibe Pico, you had Serowe, you had Marina, right? And over years, we worked tirelessly as health professionals across the entire country to actually ensure that we get the facilities accredited. And I think the government has done well in terms of that project. We've had already some hospitals like Mahalape and Scottish accredited. And I must say that having walked in or having been at line in Scottish and in Mahalape, I was quite impressed with how much improvement has come as a result of this process or the project of accreditation. And it's something that didn't end. I believe government has continued with that project and they have that are continuing to roll it out to other hospitals and other parts of the country. It's something that cannot be achieved overnight, but I believe that there is appreciation that there are limitations within our healthcare system, and a process or a project or a process of continuous improvement has been initiated to address that gap. And I believe over time we'll get to a point where we can be proud of our service delivery as Ministry of Health or as government or as Botswana, right?
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
We just ran out of time, Cliff. Look, man, let's deal with these two questions here. Let's jump into entrepreneurship right away, quickly. Besides healthcare tech, what technologies and innovation do you think, if given the opportunity, Botswana can produce and export?
Mm-hmm. I think Botswana generates a lot of data.
A lot of what?
In terms of data.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens within Botswana that can translate into data that can be used to drive innovation and to advance our interests as an economy. I will give an example. Wherever there's a challenge, you should know that there's an opportunity for business. We had the HIV pandemic. And out of the HIV pandemic, I believe within that space, we should be leading the pharma business within the HIV space. Or if we don't lead the pharma business, at least get people to pay to access our data. So I feel there's a business opportunity in that area that can be a quick win, or it's a low-hanging fruit. So I think we need to start embracing the new and common saying that data is the new oil, and that's where the world is shifting. So we need to start collecting it and packaging it in a way that we can use it to generate or to diversify our revenue streams. I don't know if you said I should focus aside technology.
No, that's fine.
I also believe that
yes.
I also believe our beef sector, and not just beef, but even small stock farming and production of goat meat is an area where we could look into as a country, optimize, and we can potentially secure a sustainable and significant market share of. So I think there is need to optimize within those two areas. And I believe that low-hanging fruits and the areas with a bit of effort, we can start generating revenue. I think there's a great opportunity in renewable energy. Botswana has a lot of cattle. We have more heads of cattle than human beings in our country. And
is that right?
Yes, every time they excrete, there's an opportunity to actually convert that into energy, as opposed to letting the methane turn into a greenhouse effect gas that will affect our environment or our climate. We could actually look at biofuel generation. We could look into areas like solar energy and actually export it to neighboring countries because currently within the region, we don't generate enough energy. So I think it's another area where there's great opportunity for Botswana to establish and position itself as a leader or a regional leader. So I'm passionate about it because I believe that we need to be pursuing sustainable goals as opposed to short-term business goals, and energy within the renewable spectrum, I think is the way to go. And Botswana has an advantage in terms of the raw materials required, for example, to manufacture and to export biogas. We also have an opportunity to harvest solar energy because we have a lot of sunlight in Botswana.
I was going to ask you about it.
We have a huge desert, so we won't be doing any damage to the environment anyway, because we don't have to cut down a lot of trees. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of opportunity as well in in that area. I think with technology, there's a lot I can talk about. I won't even stop talking because I've seen a lot of with quite a lot of young Botswana who are in the IT space who have developed really impressive apps that that could actually make a difference and improve on the way we do business and the way we get about life on our daily business, on our daily basis. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially in energy and IT. I think ICT is another area where Botswana has done well in terms of investment. It's all in all, I think biomedical engineering, since we lead the entire continent in terms of that skill, I think it's an area that government should start talking about. Not much has been said about it, but I believe there's an opportunity in that space. But we have seen individuals come out and actually play their part. We have private companies that support the entire Southern African region, north of South Africa. As in, like, when a machine breaks down sometime, even as far as Rwanda, you have an engineer taken from Botswana to go and assist. But then there's still a lot of opportunity that we need to actually turn each and every stone and ensure that we can create employment for other Botswana. Because I always tell people, every time I leave the country to go for training in South Africa or in Namibia or in Zambia, it creates a job for that administrator who ensures that the program can be efficiently run. So I believe that once we can localize some of these engineering and scientific and technical disciplines, we can actually attract jobs to our market. So I believe that there's a great opportunity in science and in technology and in engineering and in medicine generally. And if you are going to talk of job creation and economic diversification, I believe that's the way to go.
Wow. That brings us to the question of leadership. Africa has received global attention in the 21st century as the continent of growth and opportunities. You need homegrown leaders to unlock these opportunities. You're talking about leaders like you, Cliff, right? You need homegrown leaders to unlock these opportunities and access global markets. However, a conducive environment is needed. From your own experience, Cliff, do you believe Botswana and other African countries are working to empower and equip leaders in science and technology?
I've always said, in my space and where I'm at, the most important thing for me is to ensure that I can impart whatever that I learn into the next generation of leaders and engineers who are going to take after me, right? So I've emphasized this in quite a lot of platforms to say, you know what? Until Botswana realizes the need to actually invest in leaders and actually ensuring that there's succession, we're going to have a problem. I believe you know that we have an issue of youth unemployment, and that poses a great threat to our economy in the future. That is to say, we are going to have a period within our growth and development as a country that we're going to have to run with extremely inexperienced professionals who have been de-skilled by sitting at home for a couple of years without jobs. So I believe that for us to actually mitigate that risk, we need to come up with very rigorous and robust programs which develop leadership and infuse that culture of thought leadership amongst not just our scientists, but youth and upcoming professionals in general. I was lucky because I became exposed, or I got access to an American exchange program which was actually teaching leadership. And it was through that program that I learned a lot of things, I was introduced to the concept of leadership and how I can apply it to my field and to my discipline as an engineer. But then it's not everybody who has access to such resources. And I believe that is where government should come in and bridge that gap. I don't know how we can do it such that it's systematic, but I really believe it needs to be infused into our training, both at primary, junior, and tertiary, because people believe leaders are born. I personally don't believe that leaders are born. Mm-hmm. I believe that leaders are mentored and coached from a very early age in the development, and they manage to sustain and develop and build habits that actually make them better and efficient leaders. So I think it's an area where Africa is leading. And I think for us to actually break ground in that area, we need to be deliberate in terms of revisiting our curriculum and infusing this whole thinking of leadership development into it. Because I have interacted with a lot of engineers and a lot of scientists. They don't carry that kind of thinking with them. They want to be technical. They want to be in the lab. But nobody ever sits down and thinks, okay, fine, I can sit in the lab. But then there is a need within the leadership space in order to create an enabling environment for future innovators. Because even though I'm passionate about innovating and creating things, I need to sacrifice that passion just so that I can break our country out of this spell, right? The resource spell. That is to say that I, as Cliff, as passionate as I am as a biomedical engineer, as a scientist, I have made a deliberate decision that, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice myself just so that I can create an environment that is conducive for those who will come in the future. As much as I want to embark on research, science, and hands-on manufacturing or industry business, I also appreciate that there is a gap, and that gap can only be filled by somebody sacrificing and taking on that role as a leader. So I believe we need to infuse in our education that kind of thinking, and it's only when we have done that people will come out and say, you know what, I don't just wanna be acknowledged. I don't want to be a Nobel laureate. Mm-hmm. Instead, I want to make a difference, So that's where it starts, and it starts with teaching people and infusing that kind of mindset in them. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I have been privileged because I have been here from a lot of international programs and exchange programs like the likes of Mandela Washington. And it was at those programs that my eyes were open and I began to see the world differently. I began to approach my professional life with a more problem-solving approach, as opposed to serving my own personal interests. Mm-hmm. So I think leadership is quite essential, and we need to find a way to infuse it in whenever we train our engineers and our scientists.
Mm. Talk about the type of leadership you prefer and why.
Actually, I'm more of a person, I'm somewhere in between servant leadership and transformational leadership, because in as much as I believe that we need to be aggressive in terms of transforming in our leadership, I believe that we need to strike a balance and appreciating that as leaders we are actually serving. You understand? And it's only at that point that we actually embrace that concept of leadership, that you can actually diligently and honestly and efficiently serve and respect those that you are leading. Because at the end of the day, your leadership has to translate into change for an ordinary person. And until you can acknowledge, accept, and embrace that, then you are not a leader. And that is not to say you need to be laissez-faire in your approach. approach. You also need to be aggressive and transformational. You need to push for change. You need to push for improvement, but at the same time acknowledging and appreciating that leadership should come from a place within the heart, which is very profound, and that is being a servant, right? So even as a leader, I should put service before my own personal gain. I shouldn't be thinking, okay, I want to make this industry better, but then I have to be able to balance between the two, transform and at the same time serve with a lot of dignity and respect for those that I lead. So I believe that leadership is not, there's no one who has ever put a manual perfect enough to dictate which leadership style is the right one. I believe it's situational, and it needs to be approached with an open mind. You can take one or two things from this style and 2, 3, 4 things from the other style, put them together and emerge as a very, very efficient and good leader.
And so who's your role model?
Who's my role model? Yeah, I didn't expect that. Actually, I have quite a lot of role models, but then one person I look up to and I greatly look up to is Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs, because he's a person who actually set the tone in terms of innovation and technology, not just in the US, but in the world. And he did it with so much passion and so much sacrifice of himself. The videos of Steve Jobs when he was unwell and during his last days, and they really touched me, and I feel they were so profound in that this man knew that he was unwell and probably knew that his chances of survival were low, but then he still went out, to say, you know what, I'm still going to give you a lot to talk about even when I'm gone. I'm still going to make a difference. And he's a leader that I quite look up to, and I've watched quite a lot of his speeches and the way he conducted himself. And I think he's kind of a very interesting figure, enigmatic, but also very passionate and very driven. So he's somebody that I really look up to, and may his soul rest in peace.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. That's good. That's good. Cliff, we have come to the end of our program. And thank you so much. So what do you think I should bring on, to interview next?
You know what, Simon? I'm a person who believes in youth empowerment. And if it's possible for you to bring the former Minister of Trade, I'll be so happy, because she's one leader that
Cliff,
I adore a lot.
Cliff, yes. I've already interviewed her.
I look up to her, and I think she has actually done a lot in terms of changing mindset and perceptions about women and youth generally in Botswana. So
no, she's wonderful. We did a Facebook Live. I mean, I had just started doing this, so I didn't know, what I was doing at the time. But yes, she came in and
you know what? I thought of somebody. I thought of somebody. You definitely need to interview Dr. Onalen Nanago.
Okay, I don't know her. Yeah.
Dr. Onalen Nanago is actually an aviation medicine specialist.
Really?
She's a woman.
Really?
And actually the first woman in the whole continent to acquire that qualification. And she's here. And over and above that, she's a military captain. So she's a really interesting.
What's her name again? What's her name again? What's her name?
Dr. Onalen Nanago.
Okay, no, I don't know Dr. Onalen Nanago, so it's up to you. You're gonna have to make that connection, Cliff. So So I was thinking when you were
I
talking about,
definitely will.
yeah. So thank you so much, Cliff, man. I appreciate you, and it has been wonderful. It has been really wonderful. You brought a lot of, wonderful, topics and enlightening and empowering message.
So you know what? Thank you. I think probably you don't know how much of an impact you are having on upcoming leaders like us. Like having afforded me such a platform is like a great thing that you are doing because in as much as we like to believe we are leaders, we are not yet there in terms of sharpening and polishing our aptitude. And it's through such experiences that we grow as leaders. And thank you very much. I think it's worth acknowledging and appreciating you as a Botswana who constantly remembers at home and you're like consistent in giving back to your country, even though you are based in the US. And it's something that really means a lot to me. And I really appreciate the fact that you found it necessary to afford me such a platform. It's a life-changing experience, and I'll tell my grandchildren about it.
Thank you, Cliff. Appreciate you, man. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you.